If you queue for a Battleground or have someone in your party queue for a Battleground, you'll teleport to the city they entered the queue from if you join a Battleground and then exit it. Before leaving for a flight path, burn all your mana buffing up, conjuring food, if your class can do so. There's a Waylay to Aoe Spells, which cause enemies to continue to receive the effects of the AoE even if they step a few yards outside of where you originally casted it. In this clip, you'll notice that hounds that are moving outside of my range, they're still getting hit one or two more times even when they exit the AoE area. Mounts aren't on the global cooldown, which means you can cast a spell and immediately start mounting up. Very handy in PvP. The act of sitting increases your health regeneration by about 33% for classes of mana and about 66% for rogues and warriors. You'll see my HP is healing about 22 to 23 per tick, whereas when I'm moving around it's only 17. You'll see my warrior can regenerate about 4 to 5 while moving, but then when he sits, now it's up to 6 to 7. Install the Gatherer Mate 2 add-on in addition to Gatherer Mate 2 data, and in game you will now be able to see every single node that spawns in the game. You can further modify this to only show when you're tracking, or you can even modify what you want to see in each of these fields. You simply have to hit the import data button. Enemy Leash Timer is dependent upon the level of the enemy in most cases. This is relative to the location where you aggro them from. Enemies under level 30 will leash for about 10 to 11 seconds, and they'll gain about an additional second every 5 or so levels after that. This leash timer is reset by hostile actions, and fortunately for our Druid and Paladin friends, reflexive damage does not count as a hostile action. Thorn's Retribution will not increase the duration. In Vanilla World of Warcraft, the effects of minor mount speed to gloves, carrot on a stick, and mental spurs all stack to give you roughly a 9 to 10% boost. It's much safer going down hills going backwards. You have a higher chance at landing on a standable terrain and not overshooting. Mounts can travel much further into buildings if you don't keyboard turn. Here I'm going to enter the building and immediately hit my movement keys. Instantly gone. Factor the vendor and disenchant price of gear when you buy it, particularly while leveling. A lot of times the vendor price for equipment is not very much lower than the listed price. So while this sword's listed for 23 silver, I'm going to vendor it later for 18 silver, so the cost is actually only 5 silver. Important to consider this. Enemies within 8 to 10 yards or so of a chest will aggro onto you. Hitting Control plus P if your chat window open lets you cycle through previously sent messages so you can easily relink your recruiting ads or awful jokes. When forming dungeon groups, try to keep gear competition at a minimum by having one of each armor class and not stacking 2 of the same class. You can't be dazed as long as you're shielded. Alliance members can interact with a auctioneer while still on their mount through this wall. You need a macro to /target this guy, and then you also need to go into key bindings under targeting and bind interact with target. Most chests in the world belong to a group, whereas they can only be up at one location at a time. This example, in Teneris, there's 3 chests that spawn relatively by each other, so if it's not location 1 and 2, it's gonna probably be at 3. From my testing, it seems that chests respawn roughly every 5 to 10 minutes. If you're a herbalist, I strongly recommend setting your ground clutter to 0 so you can actually see where the fucking herbs are at. Last but not least, you can ignore Hearthstone cooldowns if you run this Ghetto Hearth Macro, which will invite you to a party and then kick you out after a minute. This will send you to your Hearthstone location no matter what the cooldown is. This can be used in any instance.